All right, Vince, are you ready for rapid fire?
Man, rapid fire after dark. Let's go, baby.
So
Let's
a lot
do
of
it.
people questions about the defensive coordinator popping in, and that's kind of why I just kind of wanted to keep pushing forward and get to this. We will start with that. Al Golden is leaving Notre Dame to go back to the Cincinnati Bengals as defensive coordinator. You surprised at all by this move?
A little bit. I mean, obviously not after the last week of talk, because again, just like with the players, anybody could leave at any time, and I'm just trying to get used to it. I am a little bit surprised. He just signed an extension, all of that kind
A
of
year
stuff.
ago. He signed an
Yeah,
extension a year
true,
ago, though.
but it was a 4-year extension, so you figure you had him wrapped up for a little bit. So I'm a little bit surprised. Obviously, his eyes are on the NFL. Like, he wants to go back to the NFL, and that's his prerogative. That's fine. So I'm a little bit surprised, but at the same time, it's not realistic to think that you're going to be able to keep this entire staff together after a run to the national championship. That's not realistic.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, look, he was a position coach in the NFL for 4 years. Before that, he was a head coach for 10 years, a head coach in college. So he went from being a head coach in college to a position coach in the NFL. And he didn't have the opportunity in those 4 years to become a coordinator. So, like he takes an NFL system to college to prove that he could run that system. And that's what he did. And I do find some irony in the fact that he left a Super Bowl team 3 years ago to come to college to be a coordinator. And now 3 years later, he's leaving a team that lost in the college football national championship game to go back to the NFL. But, look, one of the biggest knocks that Brian had on Golden that first season was the fact that, maybe, he's trying to scheme a little bit too much and show people what he could do and all that kind of stuff. Well, 3 years later, he obviously showed people what he can do and that he can run that system, and he could do it with college kids as well. And I think that especially, like the fact that he's going back to Cincinnati where there is so much familiarity and where, yes, he does have roots and still owns a house and all those different things. Look, not everyone wants to coach in college, and like getting that, like he earned that extension that he got last year, but those extensions, sometimes are for more than, just about, it's like they're messages that you send with extensions, both, showing Al Golden that he's valued and also messages, to recruits and all those different kind of things. But look, again, like not everyone wants to coach in college is what it comes down to. Jeff Hafley left a head coaching job at Boston College to become a defensive coordinator with the Green Bay Packers. I think if you put a lie detector test on a lot of these guys, a lot of them would tell you, like if they had their choice with everything that's going on right now with the landscape and everything else of NIL and transfer portal and all that kind of stuff, there's a lot less things you got to deal with in the NFL. It's literally just football. You don't have to worry about 20-hour rules and guys going to class and doing all this different kind of stuff. And, Al Golden is a heck of a defensive coach, and he's earned his way back to the NFL. And if ultimately that's what he wants to do, maybe he wants to be an NFL head coach someday, like Tommy Rees. And I saw somebody say today, you're going to get head-to-head matchups twice a year between Tommy Rees, offensive coordinator in Cleveland, and Al Golden, defensive coordinator in Cincinnati. So,
yes, you are.
Power to him.
Should be great.
So, a few NFL insiders reported that Golden was the top candidate for the job right after Notre Dame's national championship game loss Monday night. Do you have any problem with the timing of when these reports came out?
It just made it so obvious that he had already interviewed, and it was pretty much a done deal at that point. You know what I mean? Because I guess I look at it as a glass half full situation. These NFL guys sat on this information at least until the game was over.
Right.
So at least give them credit for that. It. Like, they didn't have to.
Yeah, they could have said it before the game. And then it's more of even more of a distraction. Yep. It is a distraction at that point. They were under no obligation to sit on it, but they did. They at least waited until the game was over. Yeah, that's right.
I give them credit because at first I was going to take this in as a negative way. Like, really, you couldn't even wait like the next day. But you know what? They clearly had this information before 5 minutes before the end of the national championship game.
Right.
They could have broke it at any time, and they didn't. And you know what? There is still some integrity left in this line of work. So I will give them credit for that.
I do as well. That's my thinking exactly, is they obviously had this information, probably days in advance at least, that, at the very least, Al Golden was going to interview. Like, it had been out there. There had been rumblings, there had been some smoke coming up, and again, like, whoever gave him the information probably did so, with the stipulation, whether it was an agent or someone with the Bengals or whoever it was, look, you can't say anything, before the game is over.
Right.
Monday,
but they listened.
Coaching in a championship.
But they listened. Like,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That's right. So, some follow-ups with this now. Do you buy or sell, first of all, Mike Mickens getting promoted to defensive coordinator?
I mean,
that was a heavier sigh than I thought that there would be.
Well, I'm looking at the question here as well from Brian, and he's wanting to know how long it's going to take to pull the trigger and all that. If he's your guy, right? Because look, Marcus Freeman has known that Al Golden was going to leave for a while now, right? And he has very publicly said that Mike Mickens is ready to be a defensive coordinator. If that's the route that you're going to take, let's just do it. Like, do it. Just announce it, do it. You know what I mean? You don't have to go through the vetting process. He's already on staff. Let's turn the page to finding his replacement as a position coach. You know what I mean? Like, that's where I'm at. Okay. If he's not the guy, okay, go find the guy that you want, but he has to have already been looking, again, not shirking his duties, getting ready for the championship game. But as you well know, as anybody knows, you've always got a short list of coaches that you want to contact if an opening happens on your staff. And so I'm sure he's had his agent reach out to agents and, that kind of stuff to gauge interest if that's the route that he wants to go. If it's Mickens, it needs to happen soon. Like, that's the way I feel. Like, just do it. Show confidence in the guy.
I agree. Because look, Marcus Freeman said last season, and I'm talking about the 2023 season, he was asked about Mike Mickens, not the 2024 season. He was asked more than a year ago about Mike Mickens being ready to be a defensive coordinator. And he said at that point, more than a year ago, that Mike Mickens was ready to be a defensive coordinator. And he has shown himself to be both an elite recruiter of talent and, have a great eye for talent, which Marcus Freeman has also, praised quite a bit, just really throughout this season as well, both the eye for the talent, the ability to develop it. And he obviously has a really good, mind for the game as well. And, look, I think Mike Mickens is going to be very sought after, and Marcus Freeman has been with this guy since they were at Cincinnati together. So either he knows that he's ready to be the guy or he doesn't, so like, I don't think that this is a very hard decision for Marcus Freeman.
I completely agree. And they're like best friends too. So like, let's go. Let's just do it. And I think Mike Mickens is probably ready. Obviously, I don't know.
They've given him all these other titles, right?
Correct.
And they've given him some pay raises as well.
Right.
And you do that to keep him from going out someplace. 100%. And so if you don't give him the job, someone else is going to make him the offer at some point.
That's exactly right.
Right. And again, you either know he's the guy or you know. So I completely buy it. It seems like a slam dunk to me. I guess that's the wrong sport, but it seems like a lock to me. But Salty also wants to know, hearing anything that suggests any additional coaches could leave for other opportunities.
I'm not hearing anything specifically, but they didn't call me and let me know. So I can tell you that there's a lot of coaches on the staff that are going to have interest from other schools or even the NFL. That's always it just like I said about the players being in demand from other teams. Well, so is the coaching staff. Coaching staff's going to be in demand too. And
you just went to a national championship game, and everyone loves Marcus Freeman's culture.
Right.
Like, he's sought after, and everyone on his staff is going to be sought after, just like Al Golden.
Right.
By the way, absolutely. I told you there was at some point, it's been a few weeks, there was a couple questions Marcus Freeman got about Al Golden. Now, am I reading something into it. I don't know. But at the time, just the way Marcus Freeman answered the question, I felt like I feel like this whole thing with Cincinnati has been brewing for a while. So anyone who wants to pin, performance in the national championship game on the fact that Al Golden is taking a job, like I think he won a couple games after this stuff started popping up because the Bengals knew they were firing their defensive coordinator. And it's not like Zach Taylor doesn't have Al Golden's cell phone number and can call him anytime that he wanted. Correct. Since he was on the staff before. Right. So I think that Al Golden won a couple playoff, helped Notre Dame win a couple playoff games after this interest with the Cincinnati Bengals came up.
Nobody in the Goog was surprised by today's information or the information that came out after the game was over on Monday.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Salty's asking, some defensive coordinators like Knowles are known to have defensive schemes that take more than one season to fully teach. If Mickens becomes defensive coordinator, would that happen?
If Mickens becomes defensive coordinator, I don't think a whole lot changes.
I wouldn't think so either. Like this is the system that he's coached in for 3 years.
Correct. They're not going to change a bunch of terminology. They're not going to change, a lot of philosophy. There's going to be maybe some play calling differences, as every play caller is different. But I don't think that you're going to see a whole lot of difference between the two. I just don't. Because Mike Mickens' hand has been into the defense for a while now, right? He's not just a position coach. He's the pass game coordinator, defensive pass game coordinator. So his hand has been in on this, right? And he coaches these guys to play man-to-man on a regular basis. So you're not going to see a lot of difference, I wouldn't think, if he ends up getting the job.
I wouldn't think so either. Like you might see some hybrid of, maybe what Marcus Freeman was doing at Cincinnati and what Al Golden was doing. But, I mean, you would assume that after 3 years, Mike Mickens has a really firm grasp on the concepts that Al Golden was operating with here in this system in the last 3 years. If anything, maybe there's some things that you can simplify a little bit. I don't know, but I wouldn't think that you're going to see many drastic changes with the system that they've been playing, because that's what Mike Mickens has been coaching in.
Yeah, you'll see a lot of similarities. Yeah.
All right, we're going to get to, I guess you want to just get to the post-game locker room thing right now?
Sure, why not?
So USA Today writer Dan Wolken took issue with some things inside the Notre Dame locker room after Monday's championship game. He posted this on X. Quote, bizarre scenes from the Notre Dame locker room. Players yelling at reporters, coaches warning people not to ask certain questions. Amateur hour, end quote. He also posted this as a follow-up. I think that if the locker room is open, which it is for the CFP, reporters should be able to go in there and respectfully ask questions without being sworn at. If a player doesn't want to talk, that's fine, end quote. Okay, so again, that's from Dan Wolken, USA Today. Jack Sobel, blue and gold guy on the Notre Dame beat, reposted Wolken saying this, quote, lot of emotions tonight. Players were distraught. Plenty of them were more than willing to talk to us. And those who wanted to did it with class. Let's have some empathy and give these kids some grace, end quote. So, Vince, what do you think of this whole situation?
I think that, number one, the locker room should not be open to reporters after a game like this. Shouldn't happen. I disagree with that wholeheartedly. But I also think you don't go up to a kid after the game and start asking him all kinds of questions about what happened when he gave up a big play that decided the game at the end. You just don't do that. I'm sorry. Not in that moment. You don't do that. And
the things, again, like we're kind of trying to piece this together because, like, to kind of lay this out for our listeners, you and I were both at the game, and they have open locker room at the same time the Marcus Freeman, Riley Leonard, Jack Kaiser press conference was going on. So some people were in the locker room. You and I were at the press conference. As we at the end of the press conference, they announced that there were 4 more minutes for open locker room.
Right.
Which is, yeah.
I don't like, and they weren't close together, by the way. So it would have taken some time to walk out of the interview room to get to the locker room. By the time we would have gotten there, there would have been like a minute left, and it would have been like, well, what's the point?
Right.
So,
and there, so again, like we weren't in there. And I'll say this. I agree about basically the bowls. It's their rule that the teams have to do this open locker room. Like during the season, this doesn't happen. I don't think really, I would say a very small percentage of any school around the country is going to have an open locker room, because obviously at Notre Dame, it's Marcus Freeman does his press conference, and then they'll bring players in and they'll stand up at the podium and answer questions in a press conference setting. It used to be several years ago, remember, like they had a big room and they would bring players in and they would kind of scatter around the room. So it was like, it was not open locker room, but it was, a little bit closer because you just had clusters of media around different players, with mics in their face and stuff like that. I'll say this. I was at the 2012 BCS National Championship game, and Notre Dame obviously lost that game. And I went into the locker room afterwards. It was the second open locker room situation I had been in. The first was at the 2005 Fiesta Bowl when Notre Dame lost to Ohio State. But after the BCS National Championship game, to me, it was completely unproductive because there's just the losing team, there's just so much
emotion
going on
raw
in there. Yeah. And it's like, so I decided, like, I don't need to go in there for that again after this game the other night. And if this guy, like, he can paint this like he's the good guy here, and all I'm doing is asking a couple of questions. It's open locker room. Everything is free game. Well, how are you asking these questions? Because like I saw Beefeater say, like they were asking other guys as well what they thought about Christian Gray's play. And it's like, if that's the angle that you're going to go with, and you've got all this emotion that goes with it, what kind of reaction do you think you're going to get?
Exactly.
Because, I've also heard that Jaden Thomas was sticking up with Christian Gray and was saying something to the effect of, hey, have a heart, man. Like, do you really need to be poking him on this? So like Dan Wolken does not have the best reputation. Like if this was, Stuart Mandel or, like I'm trying to think like Bruce Feldman, like pick your national writer with a pretty good reputation. Like if it was those kind of guys, then maybe I could buy, this image that's being painted out there that Wolken put out there. But I'm just not buying it because that's not the reputation that this guy has. Your reputation ain't the greatest, Maverick. So like reel it in a little bit. But I agree. Like the bowls are the ones that make these guys do the open locker room. I don't think it's the greatest idea, because for one, like, you're going to get national reporters who are going in there, whether it's after the Orange Bowl or the Sugar Bowl or the Rose Bowl or whatever. Like, you're going to have national reporters going in there who these players are not used to seeing. And all of a sudden they're in their face and they're asking very pointed questions. And they don't know, exactly where these guys are going to go with that. They don't know what their agendas are, So, like, why should they trust that this guy has their best interest at heart? And so that if they don't want to answer it, they don't have to answer it, quite frankly. And he can say, you can do it more respectfully. Again, I wasn't there, so I can't say exactly how it went down. But some of the things that I've heard are that he was not the most respectful in the way he was going about his business.
Agreed. I just, like you and I were sitting in the press conference, and there's a million questions I would have loved to, like, ask Marcus Freeman or ask Riley Leonard or ask Jack Kaiser, about the game specifically, right? But it's not the time or the place. It's just not. You know what I mean? Like you have to put your human hat on at some point too. It's not all about the story. It's not all about whatever you're trying to write about. It's also about that these are human beings. Right. And they probably just lost. And I'm
not trying to make it like national versus local, but the national guys, have not been around these guys. So
Right.
like they don't
Absolutely.
care about that. All they
Right.
care about is the story. That's
Correct.
literally all they
And
care
that's-
about is the story. They don't care about the emotion of a
That's a
guy who
problem.
just gave up a big play in one of the biggest moments of his life. And by the way, I think we should remember, because I saw somebody post this, like, let's not forget that like, has Christian Gray had some ups and downs this year? Yes, but he's also taken the second most snaps of anyone on the defense this year behind Xavier Watts. And because of the fact that you lost a guy like Benjamin Morrison, you had to lean on this guy more, and you had to lean on Leonard more. But let's not forget, Christian Gray made a big defensive play at the end of the Texas A&M game. He made a big play on the 99-yard interception return on a fantastic catch against USC. And of course, he made arguably the biggest play of the season with the interception that set up the game-winning field goal against Penn State. So like, you can talk about, like whether or not he's, great in coverage and all these different things, but let's not forget this guy made big play after big play this year and helped this team get to the national championship game.
Exactly. And he wasn't asking about any of that, so I just have a problem with, yes, these players are getting paid. No, they're not professional, but they are getting paid. But I wouldn't do that to a professional either. I wouldn't. So it goes both ways. You do have to have a heart, and you have to use it every now and again. That's where I'm at.
Completely agree. Rapid Nell Chihuahua wants to know who gives the credentials. It's the college football playoff. They do all the credentialing during the postseason. Excuse me. For Notre Dame home games, Notre Dame is doing the
now. They will sometimes check with Notre Dame and to see if has this group been following Notre Dame. Are they upbeat on the beat? That kind of crap. Yes. But there were also some people in the press box that probably had no business being in the press box. I'll just say that.
All right.
There were some kids up there. They're not working. You know what I mean? Like, so it is what it is.
I mean, there were some that look like kids who
that's
look like they were working, but
that's because I'm old. But there were also actual children with the exact same credential that we had.
Really?
Down on the field.
Okay.
So, but again, it's whatever.
Full Life, thank you for the super chat. Overall, would you say your optimism going into year 4 of the Marcus Freeman era is higher than going into year 3? What about your overall expectations for year 4 based on what we know at this time versus year 3?
Oh, it's definitely higher for me than it was going into year 3. For me, there's no doubt. And a lot of it has to do with what happened in year 3. Look, I will say, I said this to Sean, and we kind of had a bit of a debate about it, or we talked about it. And Brian, for that matter. I still think this team overachieved this year overall. Like, I was not predicting that this team was going to go to the national championship game.
Right. Especially when you factor the injuries, all of the injuries into this.
They overcame a lot. Okay. This isn't, Kirk Herbstreit with Ohio State overcoming, going through hell and then coming back. This is an actual overcoming something with all the injuries that Notre Dame had, and they were in the national championship game. So they overachieved. Now, I didn't think that was going to happen. Year 4, with all the guys coming back. Now, here's the flip side of those injuries, right? A lot of guys got a lot of playing time that we were not anticipating would get playing time that are going to be counted on in 25 with a ton more experience than they would have had if everybody stayed healthy the entire season. That's a huge bonus going into 25. It may have been a negative in 24, but it is now a huge bonus going into 25. So I do have more faith going into year 4 based on who's coming back. I think Marcus Freeman has grown as a coach, right? I think the team has grown, and I think the overall talent level will be better in year 4 than it was in year 3.
I said, I think it would have been after the Georgia game, that like when you think of just the growth that Marcus Freeman has had as a head coach, like as a game head coach, the way he manages games, like that alone grew by leaps and bounds just over the course of the season. He put himself into the echelon of being elite. Like we were watching before we went to the game, Greg McElroy said that if Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame had won the national championship, that you can make a great case that Marcus Freeman becomes the face of college football when you consider there's no Nick Saban anymore.
Mhm.
You don't have a guy like Urban Meyer anymore, and those kind of guys. Obviously, that didn't happen, but Marcus Freeman has put himself into that upper echelon of coaches. Like all the rankings, like you're going to see postseason coaches rankings, and Marcus Freeman was pretty consistently in terms of head coaches in the country ranked in the 30s, kind of in that range. Maybe low 20s is where he's been, at the highest the last couple of years. But like when you see those rankings come out now, like at a minimum he's going to be in the top 10, and that alone gives me great optimism for what next year can be compared to what this year was. And when you add all the experience that they're going to have coming back, that puts it up even higher. But again, biggest question is going to be quarterback.
Welcome in, everybody.
Defensive coordinator as well. Did you hear that?
It was me. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I may or may not doing double duty working on another show at the same time. My bad. My bad.
Are you editing while you're talking? Is that
what I was going to, but obviously that's not going to work because the audio is coming out of my computer and not my headphones. So that's not going to work. So I'm going to put that to the side.
So while we're on the subject of Freeman, let me just throw this out there. Did you buy or sell? Because you and I haven't had a chance to talk about this, in
surprising
a show
since we
format.
spent so much time in the car. But
did you buy or sell Marcus Freeman's decision to attempt the field goal on 4th and 9 when they were down by 16 points?
That's a loaded question. And here's why I will say that. In the moment, I was like, really? Like, that's what we're going to do? Like that,
Right.
Now, towards the end of the game, everybody was like, man, that 3 points would be real great right about now.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? When they were down by 8, and it would have been 5, which would have been a major difference, at that point in the game. So he's absolutely right. His explanation was at that point, when you're down 16, you go for 3, you're down, it was 16.
If you get the field goal, you're down by 13. Yeah.
Right. You're down 13. It's a lot easier to get 13 than it is to get 16, because to get 16, you got to get 2 2-point conversions.
And it's a lot easier to get 14 than it is 16.
Correct.
Because you don't have to convert 2 2-point conversions. Right.
Correct. So the odds go up if you have if you're trailing by 13 as opposed to 16. So in that regard, I get it. It was 4th and 9, 4th and goal from the 9. That's a tough ask, obviously. Obviously, it ended up they missed it. So, I mean, revisionist history, obviously. But you figure at that point, it's a gimme field goal. You're going to get 3 points. It's still 2 possessions. I get that. So I guess looking back, I don't have a problem with it because I understand his rationale behind it. I thought it was hilarious seeing somebody posted about how Notre Dame didn't deserve to win because their coach didn't have he didn't want to go for it. And like, he didn't have the killer instinct to win the game because he went for a field goal there. It's like, wow, tell me you've never watched a Notre Dame game and watched Marcus Freeman coach.
Right. I mean,
come on. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
If it's 4th and 5, maybe I think there's a much greater case for going for it. But, look at the couple plays before that. And I mean, like Riley Leonard threw that pass to Jaden Greathouse. He wasn't, he was going to get stopped short of the goal, well short of the goal line anyway. At the best case, you're going to be around the 4-yard line there. So then, again, like maybe that gives you a chance. But Jeremiah Love was also standing there wide open in the backfield, and Leonard could have just flipped it to him. And then Love's got a one-on-one matchup to get into the end zone. And, he probably scores if Leonard just flips him the pass there, but instead it's 4th and 9, and it's not 4th and 5, end goal, 4th and goal from the 9 instead of 4th and goal from the 5 or the 4. And I think that's a lot different equation, especially when you factor in like that is Ohio State's thing, like red zone defense is their thing. They keep teams out of the end zone, and that's what they did in that situation. Again, because then if you flip it to how good Ohio State is as a red zone team.
Yeah.
And then you're also talking about, you still got to get, 2 touchdowns and 2 extra points. Well, I mean, extra points are basically just short touchdowns in the red zone, right? Against a great red zone team. And Notre Dame, to their credit, converted a couple of 2-point conversions, but the more that you have to get, the greater the odds work against you. So I can see his rationale. And again, like, that's a decision that he's got to make in real time. And like you said, you have that 3. If he doesn't hit the upright there, then that 3 would have been pretty valuable the way things worked out after that.
Yep. Completely agree. So, I mean, I didn't like it in the moment, but I understand it looking back. Does that make sense? Like, that's kind of where I'm at.
No, I kind of was the same way. I was like, wasn't thrilled, but then to hear, again, like, to hear him explain what his rationale was, I can completely see that. I can completely see it. So Sam Pendleton, Deion Colzie, Jaden Thomas all went to the transfer portal for Notre Dame today. Are you surprised by all of them, some of them, or none of them?
None of them. Ooh. I'm not overly surprised. I think you and I that talked about, what do you do if Jaden Thomas wants to come back? Didn't you and I talk about that? Yeah.
Yep.
He's one of those guys that if he wants to come back, you welcome him with open arms, because I think he's a good leader. I think he's a good guy to have in the room, that kind of stuff. The wide receiver room is still young, to be honest with you. You extract Colzie and Thomas out of that room's still pretty young. So I think I'm a little surprised. And yet I think both of these guys, Colzie and Thomas, want to go someplace where they're going to play some more. Or I shouldn't even say play more, because Jaden Thomas played a bunch. It's just a matter of he wasn't really targeted a bunch. And I think he wants to go someplace where that could be the case. And he's leaving with a degree. I don't have a problem with it. He was probably going to get passed over by, Malachi Fields, maybe Gilbert, that kind of a thing. So it was probably time if he wants to keep playing. So I have no problem with it. So not really surprised, but a little disappointed, because I really like Colzie and I really like Thomas. I would have loved to see those guys stick around, to be honest with you, but I totally understand where they're coming from.
Yeah. I'm surprised by none of these moves. You kind of spelled it out with the receivers. Both of these guys, good job with leadership, especially Jaden Thomas. And, that would have been the biggest reason, that for Jaden Thomas to come back, because, he is one of the leaders on this team. And again, like things that we've heard say that he was one of the guys sticking up for Christian Gray in the locker room.
Yep.
Team
after
guy. The game the
Love
other
it.
night. Yeah, that's
Team
exactly
guy,
right.
Leader, all of that. And as far as Sam Pendleton is concerned, I think the writing was on the wall for him.
There's just look at the numbers. Like he was listed as the number 2 center on the depth chart by the end of the season, and you've got Ashton Craig coming back next year. There's just so much talent coming in that room that it's really tough.
He just kind of got edged out. And look, here's what you need to know, right? He was, to my knowledge, he was 100% healthy, and they had an injured Rocco Spindler playing instead. And so that kind of tells you where he's at on the depth chart, or where he's at as far as what the coaches think. Sam Pendleton's going to go someplace and be a starter. And that's what he wants. And I have no problem with that. So that's a situation where there's a ton of talent in that offensive line room. There's going to be some guys that are going to leave. Sam just happened to be the first one, and I wish him nothing but the best.
Ditto. Echo those sentiments. Exactly. Sportsman Philly 22. Why was Jeter rushing his kick? Why couldn't they get it ready faster?
I
mean, it definitely looked like he was wound up a little bit too much.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember specifically if it was a rushed situation. I haven't.
It just seemed to me like he was trying to kick the crud out of it, and didn't really need to. Should have just been a nice, easy swing, and because
the ball was on the 9, so that's 19 plus 7. That's a
27
yard goal.
Yeah,
27 yards is what they meant, because
I
think they go 8 back. So yeah. I mean, that's a chip shot, man. So, like, yes, it's on the hash and you're close. So you do have to kind of aim it a little bit and adjust kind of what you do. But I don't know if he was rushed per se. But, yeah, I agree with you on that one. He tried to kick the snot out of it and just overswung. And that's why it went too far left and hit the upright. It's tough.
I think we're gonna finish it up with that,
it?
Vince. Yeah.
I got to go to school tomorrow, Sean Stiers.
I know. Like we were here for a while tonight.
I don't
have to go to. I don't have to go to school, but
you get to kick it around in Boston.
That's right.
So, are you getting a good location? You get to walk around a little bit.
There's actually, like in terms of things around us, there's really nothing around us.
Okay.
There's a big park next to us where there's like walking trails next to the Charles River.
I know you like walks in the morning.
I think there's a Starbucks in the lobby.
Okay.
Starbucks not my number one.
No, it's not.
It's ironic that we're in Boston and there's no Dunkin' nearby because Dunkin' is my go-to.
It is.
But I might have to, I might go grab the coffee and do a little trail walk in the morning. That might be my thing.
There you go. What's the temp out there right now? Is it pretty cold?
It was a little warmer out here, I think, than it was in South Bend. It was in the 30s, I think, when we got out. So
heat wave.
Yeah, practically.
Heat wave, baby. It's 19 here right now. So
I agree, Salty. Like Starbucks, way too bitter sight. Dunkin', nice, smooth. Vince and Brian aren't coffee guys, so neither one of them have any clue what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I don't know how you guys drink coffee. It's gross. I don't know how you do it.
Outland, Outland's there with me. DD for life. Like I started drinking Dunkin' like probably around the time that I met you. It's been 20 years or so.
As long as I've known you, you've been a Dunkin' guy. Like anytime you and I have ever done anything in a car for an extended period of time, we have to stop at Dunkin'. That's always been the case.
That's right.
So I'm used to it.
You guys rolled your eyes at me when we were leaving the hotel.
I knew it was coming.
Last week, I was like, I found a Dunkin'. Vince was like, all right, whatever.
You did offer to get us something if we wanted it, though. So I appreciate that.
I did.
Yeah. My son, on the other hand, is a coffee guy. So
really?
he was drinking coffee
that's right. He was drinking coffee he got his coffee at Buc-ee's on the way back. Now that he did.
I blame this internship program that he has because they have a coffee maker, like this fancy coffee maker. So he makes himself a fancy coffee every single day.
Got him hooked on it, huh?
And he got him hooked. So he's not spending the money on like Dunkin' and Starbucks and stuff, but he drinks it.
See, Carlos asks a very good question. How do you function without coffee? I mean, how do you?
I just drink milk every morning. I don't know. That's where I'm at.
Vince's milk.
I'm a milk guy. So caffeine doesn't affect me at all. So I don't know if that's like a superpower or something. Like I could go upstairs right now and just like smash a Mountain Dew and fall right asleep without any problem. So
see, I drink coffee all morning, but if I drink it too late, I'm up all night. Is the way it goes.
Yikes.
All right.
Yikes.
We'll go ahead and wrap it up
all right.
that. I've got a basketball game tomorrow, so I won't be around.
This is true.
I think you guys will.
TBA on the show. We'll see what happens. Got to find myself a co-host. Got to figure that part out. But
is Junior? Has he got something going on tomorrow?
Yes, he's going to be out of town. I believe
made up bowling holiday or something like that.
I believe he's going to be out of state in one of them southern states tomorrow, according to the little sheet we have here. So that's all I got. So I got to figure something out.
Thanks for hanging out late with us. We had a little late night Ivy Nation. Great questions.
I'm glad
tonight
you made it happen because
I'm glad we could. I didn't want to go a whole week without doing a show after championship game a couple days ago.
That's fair.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for tonight. Great talking to you, and we will talk to you later this week on Ivy Nation Sports.
See you, everybody.